Mist curls low over the mountain as the sun dips behind the ridges, painting the valleys in bruised purples and deep shadows. The air is sharp, carrying the scent of wet earth and eucalyptus. And somewhere in the distance, the wind whispers through the trees like it knows secrets. There's a road that winds down the mountainside, narrow and steep, hugging the cliffs like a living thing. At night, the pass is almost silent, save for the occasional creak of a tree, the distant call of a night bird, and something else. Something that moves in the shadows. It's easy to tell yourself it's your imagination, or the play of fog and moonlight. A pale face emerging from the mist, dark eyes fixed on yours, reminding us that not all stories on these mountains are told by the living. Welcome to If These Trees Could Talk.
We acknowledge that we are recording today on Wanneroo land, and we pay our respects to all Aboriginal people on our land and across the lands that this recording is reaching. Today we acknowledge the Gundungurra, Wiradjuri and Darug people, the First Nations custodians of the land on which Mount Victoria Pass and the surrounding Blue Mountains sit. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and honour their deep connection to this country, its valleys, ridges and waterways, a connection that stretches back tens of thousands of years. We recognise that we share our stories from stolen land that carries stories far older than any we tell today, stories of life, survival and belonging. As we explore the history, tragedy and mysteries of this place, we acknowledge the ongoing custodianship of the First Nations peoples, and we commit to listening, learning and honouring their culture and heritage.
I have a real problem with the fact that this shit was published. The scene told its own terrible story. He is the man who murdered your wife. The jury took only 20 minutes to reach their decision. The verdict was guilty. I feel so sad and furiously angry just thinking about it. Pretty great day out there, Megan.
It's a beautiful day.
I had the best time driving in today. I have a friend who is doing a bit of a road trip around Scotland and the top of England at the moment, and she has been sending me some beautiful videos. So I wanted to show her the drive in today, and the kangaroos just popped out at the exact right moment, and I was like, oh, this is so Australian.
And so stunning at this time of year here in Australia. It is early spring. We acknowledge Wiradjuri lands just then. I drove to Mudgee, which is on Wiradjuri land, on Friday, and the entire back road was just lined with wattle the whole way. It was the most stunning drive.
The flowers are so beautiful at the moment. And I have a couple of friends in Canada and the US who are like prepping for spooky season because like as soon as fall hits there, it becomes, all about Halloween. And it's the only time that I really wish that I lived there instead of here. So
it's not a creepy time at all, is it?
No, it's so pretty. There were so many joeys down there. It was really, really lovely. So it is really one of the favourite parts of my week, driving in here to the studio. We do live in a pretty spectacular part of the Australian landscape.
We do.
While I was taking those videos, I thought it would be really lovely if some of our listeners snapped a photo of where they were listening to the pod from. So I'll put up a little post for this one on the Facebook page, and wherever you're listening from now, take a photo. It doesn't matter if it's in your car. Well, don't take a photo if you're driving. We want you to be safe about it. or like if you're on your walk or you're at home with a cuppa or whatever you're doing, take a photo and then pop it in the comment section. And I'll share my little kangaroo photos and we can all see where we're listening from because we've got a lot of overseas listeners now. And I've been enjoying getting my lovely friends' videos so much that I was like, I'd love to see all of the places where people are listening from. So do that for me. It would make me really, really happy.
Love that.
I was going to trick you and say that we have a love story today.
Well, it didn't sound like a love story from that introduction. Again, there's no spoilers. I have no idea what we're about to talk about, but it sounded very paranormal.
I can't tell you what we're going to talk about or you're going to tell me not to.
Oh, no. Excellent. I love these ones.
There's some marriages that occur in today's story, but it is anything but a love story. So before we head in, I just want to give a trigger warning that there is some stuff about domestic violence and a murder in this episode. So you guys can obviously choose what you listen to.
Good luck finding one of these episodes that doesn't have a murder in it.
Have you been to the Blue Mountains?
Yeah.
Have you been west of the Blue Mountains? Down in towards like Lithgow area?
Yeah.
Do you know the little historic site when you get to the bottom of the Blue Mountains? Have you been in there?
No, I drove past it, but I know what you're about to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, I know the town and I remember your photos from this trip.
Yeah. So
But I don't remember the murder and the domestic violence, so.
No, you won't.
I know the little town that you're talking about. We went through it on our way to the glowworm cave.
Yes, at Lithgow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first time I seen it when we went down. I think the first time I paid attention to it and I really wanted to go. But we did the glowworm tunnel too and went out to Nunes and we didn't go there that trip. But then a little while later, Scott was taking Charlie to some burnout competition at Eastern Creek. I can't keep up with their car adventures. And I just said, I'm going to drop you boys off and head up into the mountains. So I went for a little hike with Marla. It was so lovely. We did the quintessential Blue Mountain stuff. Like I went and looked at the lookouts at the Three Sisters and all of that kind of stuff. And then we ended up down in Hartley at the historic site and spent the afternoon just walking around there, checking out the buildings and stuff. And it's all going to play into today's story.
Well, before you ruin it, I just need to say that it is worth a trip to this stunning part of Australia.
Oh, yeah. Did you like the glowworm tunnel?
So cool. So much.
We got there early in the morning and we were the only people there. Oh, did you?
Yeah.
How good is it?
So good.
Did you walk all the way through?
Yep. And then we probably spent another couple of hours walking around out the other side as well.
It's like you enter Narnia when you come out of that tunnel.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Like the ferns and stuff there are so big. It's, oh, God, it's gorgeous.
We actually went after some pretty serious fires went through there maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and everything on the outside of the tunnel was black. And then as soon as we got through, it was like Narnia. Like this fire didn't get to the other side of the tunnel.
So amazing. I suggest getting the glowworm tunnel on your travel list. It is a great spot. They have done a lot of work there, and I think there's like boardwalks and stuff now, big car parks and things like that. National parks have done a lot of work there since those fires. So it is a really amazing spot. But hot tip, if you can get there early in the morning before the droves of visitors come, it makes it so much more special.
Now, you did not tell me about the story that you had today, but you did tell me that the average length of pages of notes you have there is double what you usually have. So I am going to stop talking and listen.
Okay, great. I originally started researching this story just before Coz went to her little holiday at the Blue Mountains because I thought we'll do this episode, scare the shit out of her before she goes. Because the ghost story aspect is really quite scary. But when I started researching it, I found out who the ghost is. And I wanted to do her story justice, so it didn't get put out before Cos went, because it's not just the story of the haunting of the second bridge. It is the story of her life that we're going to hear today.
Okay.
If you have ever driven west from Sydney across the Blue Mountains, you'll know the moment when the highway crests near Mount Victoria and begins its long plunging descent down towards Lithgow. This is Victoria Pass, a road that doesn't just lead you down the mountains, but back in time. It's steep. Even today, with sealed asphalt and modern brakes, truck drivers take it slow, crawling down the winding bends that seem to coil like a snake around the hillside. In the 1800s, though, it was far more dangerous. Cobb & Co coaches rattled down here with wheels locked and horses straining. A little more than a narrow stony track hewn by convict labour. The sandstone cuttings still stand, sheer and jagged on either side, a reminder of the back-breaking work that forced a way through. From the lookout points, the view is staggering. The Hartley Valley sprawls out below, ridges rolling away into a blue-grey haze. But standing at the edge, it's not hard to imagine how unforgiving this stretch of road could be. Fog rolls in without warning, and in winter, black ice slicks the bends into treacherous curves. And always that dizzying drop at the side. Travellers today might stop to admire the view, snap a photo, or take a walk along the old road. But there's something about this place that feels heavier than just stone and scenery. Locals whisper about it, and drivers say they have seen her. A woman stepping out of the mist on the side of the road. Some say she's a trick of the fog. Others believe she's the restless spirit of a young woman whose life ended violently here almost 2 centuries ago. Victoria Pass quickly earned a reputation. Horsemen whispered about it around campfires. Cobb & Co drivers shared their stories at local inns. In every story, the horses, they said, would shy and rear as they approached the second bridge, as though they sensed something unseen was blocking the way. And then came the stories of a figure, a woman's shape, drifting in the mist, arms raised, pleading, always the same spot by the second bridge. A narrow, twisting mountain road, the valley yawning away on one side, sheer cliffs pressing close on the other. Suddenly there she is, pale and unmoving, eyes locked on yours, a figure suspended between life and death, pleading for your help. Once cars started traversing the mountain, travellers swore they saw her for decades. Some said she appeared suddenly right in their path. Others reported a shadow hovering near the second bridge, dissolving into the mist as quickly as she appeared. But the road has changed over the years. The old bridge has been bypassed, and the ghost of Mount Victoria Pass doesn't show her face as much these days. The idea of a woman turning up on that stretch of road is terrifying. It's a scary area without the addition of a lady who really, really needs your help. If you're intrigued by the history of the Blue Mountains and want to step into the past, there's a place where you can still feel it under your feet. Just a short drive from Mount Victoria Pass lies Hartley Historic Village, a remarkable collection of 19th century buildings preserved in time. Walking along the main street, you'll see the old stone cottages, a courthouse, and the old police barracks, all echoing the life of settlers and convicts. Not far from Hartley, perched on a ridge with a commanding view of the valley, is Collits Inn. Built in the 1820s by Collits, the inn offered shelter and a gathering place for travellers heading across the mountains. Collits, originally convicted at the Old Bailey in 1800 for receiving stolen goods, arrived in the colony in 1801. After serving his sentence, he became a respected settler and innkeeper. His establishment became known as Collits Inn. Despite his success, Pierce had a strained relationship with his eldest son, William. In 1839, Pierce made a public declaration in the Australian newspaper that his son was in fact an idiot and cautioned the public against extending any credit to him. He stated that William had no control over any property except through him, and he would not be held responsible for any debts incurred by his son. This public rebuke highlighted the tension between the father and son and underscored the challenges within the Collits family. Today, the Collits Inn has been restored and operates as a boutique accommodation and event space.
Have you stayed there?
No, I haven't, but I so want to.
I bet you do.
Lots of people have weddings there, and the photos are just stunning. It is a very, very beautiful building, and it's going to play a central role in the story today. Before we get there, I'm going to introduce you to a young lady. Caroline James was born in 1827 in the rough settlement of Liverpool. The daughter of William and Mary James, she was one of 6 children, 2 older brothers. Soon a little sister Maria would join them, and in time 2 more siblings would come. The family made their way into the Blue Mountains to a place known as 20 Mile Hollow, not too far from Hartley. There they scratched out a living running an inn, though not a reputable one. The James's Inn was more a sly grog shop than a respectable tavern, a place where liquor flowed freely, fights broke out often, and the rooms were known for their filth rather than their hospitality. It wasn't long before competition arrived. A man named Thomas Pembroke established the Woodman Inn in 1834, a fine, well-appointed house that threw the failings of the James's Inn into sharp relief. Pembroke wanted the James family gone, but they had squatters' rights, their residence stretching back to 1831, and a bitter feud between the 2 families began to simmer. And then, in 1835, tragedy struck. Mary James, Caroline's mother, gave birth to another child, and just weeks later, on the 12th of October, she was dead.
The baby or the mum?
The mum. The story was told that Mary had hanged herself in one of the inn's rooms while her husband William, too drunk to intervene, lay nearby. But rumours spread quickly. By November, William James was charged with the murder of his wife. Imagine Caroline then, just 8 years old, her sister Maria 6, her brothers John 14, Isaac 10, Simon 4, and newborn James only weeks old. Their mother...
James.
Yes, James. It was a whole thing back then. They really made some poor choices with names. I think when you have so many kids...
Well, we're out of names.
They start to run out. Their mother was gone. Their father...
Sorry, not a funny story.
It's nice to add a little bit of lightness to this. We need it where we can get it. Their father was jailed after their mother died. The children left to fend for themselves in the bushland of the Blue Mountains. Their neighbour Pembroke refused to help unless he was paid, but there was no one to pay him. Hunger gnawed at the James's children until baby James died. Soon the family was split apart. Caroline and Maria were sent to Hartley Vale to work as servants at the Collits Inn. For the 2 young girls, it must have felt like exile. In 1836, their father William James was sentenced to hang for their mother Mary's murder. The jury believed that in a drunken quarrel, he had been the one to tighten the noose around her neck. But after the verdict, doubts about the trial's conduct, not his own, were examined. In the end, William James was spared the gallows, pardoned, and set free. Yet he never came back for his daughters. Caroline and Maria, still only 9 and 7, working full-time as servants for the Collits to earn a roof and food, waited in vain for their father to collect them. He never did. His role in their lives was finished. 2 orphan girls, traumatised and abandoned, left to make their own way in a harsh colony. And for girls like them, in that time, their only hope of security was marriage. By 1940, Caroline's path was already twisting towards disaster. A man named John Walsh, a freed convict of 28 years of age, turned his attentions first to her. Caroline was just 12 when he began a relationship with her. Not long after, he set his sights on her sister Maria, barely 10 years old. What feels abhorrent to us here now was scarcely remarked upon back then. The legal age of consent was 12, and with no family to defend their reputations, the sisters were vulnerable prey. This part gives me the ick. Well, of course it gives you the ick. Like, it's not cool. But this thing of men owning women generationally, where men came through with this belief that, you know, you took a woman, she was your wife, she was your property. I think it plays into a lot of the problems that we still face within families today.
Yeah.
Later that same year, another suitor emerged, William Collits, the son of their employer. Awkward and foolish by most accounts, including the ones that his father put into the newspaper, but wealthy enough to own a few cattle. For Caroline, just 13 years old now, he was a better prospect than Walsh. She married him, while Maria, soon after, married John Walsh himself. Two girls barely out of childhood, bound to men who would drag them deeper into tragedy. Caroline's marriage to William Collits proved miserable. He was idle, a poor provider, and drank heavily. Their union was childless, and gossip painted him as weak-willed and foolish. Caroline, young, restless, and hardened by her turbulent childhood, found herself drawn again to John Walsh, the man who had once courted her and was now her brother-in-law. Before long, Caroline left her husband. She returned to her sister Maria, and the two women lived together under the same roof and both in the bed of John Walsh. In a small settlement where everybody knew everybody's business, the arrangement raised eyebrows and sharpened tongues. To some, Caroline was a fallen woman. At 14, a fallen woman. A wife who had abandoned her home. To others, she was simply surviving, trapped between bad choices in a world that gave women few good ones. But scandal wasn't the only storm brewing in Hartley Vale. The relationships inside that small household were volatile. Walsh was also a heavy drinker. He was extremely quick to temper. Caroline and Maria were bound together by blood and tragedy, and were now bound as sisters sharing the same man. The newspapers of the time had no problem painting them as loose and abandoned characters. I have a real problem with the fact that this shit was published. Even though that the women they were talking about were 14 and 12-year-old girls. Life was not simple for Caroline. William did come after her, and she tried to go back to the marital home more than once. However, William was a husband who treated her poorly and was a vicious drunk. Not dissimilar to her sister's husband. However, I wonder if maybe together the girls thought they might just have a fighting chance against these horrible men. Mm-hmm. It was late on the 3rd of January 1842 at a Hartley Inn run by Joseph Jaggers, one of the busiest coaching stops along the road. The tavern was alive with travellers and bullock drivers, the clatter of mugs, the smell of spilled spirits, smoke, and the faint tang of sweat from men who had been riding all day. The firelight flickered across the rough timber walls, casting long and dancing shadows. And inside, John Walsh was drinking heavily when Caroline and William arrived. William had a few drinks, and it appeared everyone seemed to be getting along, and the three left to make their walk home back up the mountain. Along the way, William and Caroline got into an argument. John grabbed hold of Caroline's arm during the argument with William and told her to come home with him. He said to her, "While ever I have a home, you shall have one too." Then he turned his attention to William. He struck him, knocking him to the ground. William got back up to his feet and ran. John chased him, threatening that he was going to kill him, but William had had far less to drink than John and was able to get away, fleeing into the night, disappearing into the darkness and making his way back to the inn at Blackheath where the trio had planned to meet up with Maria. John Walsh arrived at the same inn around 2 hours later. He was wearing only a striped convict-style shirt, his pants, shoes, jacket and hat all missing. William asked him, "Where is my wife?" John Walsh told William a story about how he and Caroline had been attacked by a group of men, including the son of the innkeeper, Joseph Jaggers. He explained to William that the men had stripped him naked, but he managed to escape. Fearing for his life, he ran, leaving Caroline with the men. He said he stopped and borrowed a government-issued shirt from some soldiers on the way back to the inn, but he didn't mention to them that he had left his 15-year-old companion alone with these men who intended to kill him. Both men then went off to bed, John with his wife Maria and William alone, neither reporting the incidents to the authorities. As dawn broke over Mount Victoria Pass, the morning calm was shattered by a grim discovery. Matthew Wall, a postal carrier on his regular route to deliver mail to Hartley, spotted something strange along the road, a scattering of men's clothes, tossed haphazardly across the track. At first he thought little of it. Travellers often lost things on the road, and Matthew dismounted to gather the garments. But as he bent to pick them up, his hand fell upon something unexpected. It was a woman's shawl, delicate and out of place amongst the rough men's clothing. Puzzled, Matthew looked around, scanning the roadside, and that was when he saw her. Just off the track, partially hidden in scrub, lay Caroline's body. Matthew had known her for years. He remembered her as a girl, long before she'd been married to William Collits. But the figure before him was almost unrecognisable. Her head had been crushed with brutal force. The weapon, a heavy stone, matted with blood and hair, left nearby as if to bear silent witness into her brutal death. The scene told its own terrible story. Caroline had not only been murdered, it was evident she had also been raped. A trail of blood suggested she had been dragged from the roadside into the bushes. Shaken, Matthew did what he knew he must. He notified the soldiers from the nearby stockade and began gathering the evidence to take to the local constable. Along the road, he came across William Collits and John Walsh. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. William explained that he was looking for his wife and the events of the night before, recounting the quarrel and his flight into the mountains. After hearing William Collits' account, Matthew Wall pointed directly at John Walsh and spat the accusation. "He is the man who murdered your wife." John, however, protested loudly, insisting on his innocence. He repeated the story that he'd told to Collits the night before and would later tell authorities, that Jagger's son and a group of men were involved. The three men then returned to the murder site, carefully collecting Caroline's body. Together they headed back toward Jagger's Inn, where the innkeeper and a guest would soon hear John fling accusations at Jagger's son. But both witnesses confirmed that Jagger's son had been home the entire night. For Matthew, and anyone who knew Caroline, the horror was now entwined with suspicion. This was no random attack. The threads of guilt were beginning to form around one man, John Walsh, even as he protested, desperate to shift the blame. Any comments before I go to the next bit?
Keep going.
Suspicion closed in quickly. The evidence was damning. Walsh had been the last man seen with Caroline, He had returned home at an hour that did not align with his story, and his attempt to shift blame onto Jagger's son collapsed when the innkeeper and guests swore the boy had been with them all night. By the time the constable was notified, Walsh's name was already on everybody's lips. Caroline's brutal death demanded justice, and John Walsh fit the part of the guilty man almost too well. When the matter came before the court at Bathurst, the interest was immediate. Crowds gathered, desperate to hear how this sordid tale would unfold. The evidence was largely circumstantial, but powerful all the same. A soldier testified that Walsh had come up to him in the early hours demanding clothes and spinning a story about being held up by armed men. But the soldier said he never believed it. Walsh was extremely drunk, rambling, and when he showed a wound on his head, supposedly from a pistol blow, the soldier thought it looked more like a scratch from a nail. He dismissed the naked man's tale of ambush as the nonsense of a drunk. The jury took only 20 minutes to reach their decision. The verdict was guilty. The judge, solemn and deliberate, sentenced him to death. He implored Walsh to repent, not only for Caroline's murder, but as he carefully phrased it, for this and any other crimes you may have committed. At the time, the word struck many as strange, almost loaded with hidden meaning. Only later did it become clear. Walsh's name was not new to the court system. In 1836, he had stood trial for the murder of a man named John Crate, but walked free. It was alleged that while still a convict, John Walsh had used a tomahawk to smash in the head of Crate. His body was discovered in a hut with the murder weapon still close by. It was testified at the trial that Walsh had been paid by another convict to kill the man. However, due to lack of evidence, the judge compelled the jury to acquit John Walsh. Then again, in 1839, he was in the courts. This time tried by the same judge who sat on the trial for Caroline's murder. This time he was accused of the brutal killing of a woman and her young son. Their home had been robbed of tobacco and a keg of liquor, and their bodies found with their heads smashed in with a rock. John Walsh, after removing his blood-soaked clothes and fleeing, was en route back to the scene of the murder with an Aboriginal man who he had forced to help him remove the bodies. Nearing the scene, he was apprehended. When asked about his odd clothing, he told the constable that he had been ambushed by bushrangers who stripped him naked and told him about the murder that they had just committed. In an attempt to have his life spared by these horrible bushrangers, he agreed to move the bodies for the bushrangers, but they kept his clothes as a disguise to get out of the neighbourhood and forced the ones he was currently wearing upon him. Again, in this trial, John Walsh was acquitted. Walsh had lived under the shadow of suspicion for years, slipping free each time. But on the 3rd of May 1842, his luck had run out. He was sent to the gallows at the front of Bathurst Jail, still protesting his innocence. While Caroline's death had been avenged, her soul remained restless and would be seen for years to come by many people travelling along the road, ensuring that the story of her life and death was not forgotten. Not only was it not forgotten, her memory was immortalised by the bush poet Henry Lawson, who also claims to have met her on the Second Bridge. Now, I have a copy of this poem. It's unusual, and it just goes for a little bit. Do you want me to read it to you?
I do.
There's some parts we're going to laugh about.
Okay.
You'd call the man a senseless fool, a blockhead or an ass, who dared to say he saw the ghost of Mount Victoria Pass. But I believe the ghost is there, for if my eyes are right, I saw it once upon a ne'er to be forgotten night. 'Twas the year of 89. The day was nearly gone. The stars were shining and the moon is mentioned later on. It is. I tramped as far as Hartley Vale, though tired at the start. But coming back, I got a lift in Johnny Jones's cart. 'Twas winter on the mountain then, the air was rather chill, and so we stopped beside the inn that stands below the hill. A fire was burning in the bar, and Johnny thought a glass would give the tired horse a spell and help us up the pass. Then Jimmy Bent came riding up, a tidy chap was Jim. He shouted twice, and so of course we had to shout for him. And when at last we said good night, he bet a vulgar quid that we would see the ghost in black, and sure enough we did. As we climbed the stony pinch below the Camel's Bridge, we talked about the girl in black who haunts the second bridge. We reached the fence that guards the cliff and passed the corner post, and Johnny, like a senseless fool, kept harping on the ghost. She'll cross the moonlit road in haste and vanish down the track. Her long black hair hangs to her waist, and she is dressed in black. Her face is white, a dull dead white, her eyes are open wide. She never looks to left or right or turns to either side. I didn't believe in ghosts at all, though I was rather young, but still I wish with all my heart that Jack would hold his tongue. The time and place, as you will say, 'twas 12 o'clock almost, were both historically favourable for a ghost. The way he's done that, there's a little dash in the minute of favourable. It just doesn't line up. I would like to give some advice to Henry Lawson. Were both historically favourable for us to see a ghost. Would have worked much better, Henry.
You're very good at words. I feel like you're equipped to give Henry Lawson advice.
But have you seen the second bridge beneath the Camel's Back? It fills the gap that broke the ridge where convicts made the track. And over the right of Hartley Vale a homely beauty lies, and over the left the mighty walls of Mount Victoria rise. And there's a spot above the bridge where the track is steep, from which poor convict Govett rode to christen Govett Sleep. And here a teamster killed his wife, for those old days were rough, and here a dozen others had been murdered right enough. A lonely moon was over all, and she was shining well. This is the part where he talks about the moon that he mentioned before. A lonely moon was over all, and she was shining well. At angles from the sandstone wall, the shining moonbeams fell. In short, the shifting moonbeams beamed. The air was still as death, save when the listening silence seemed to speak beneath its breath. The tangled bushes were not stirred because there was no wind, but now and then I thought I heard a startling noise behind, which does not rhyme with wind. Henry.
Bind.
Then Johnny Jones began to quake. His face was like the dead. "Don't look behind, for heaven's sake, the ghost is there," he said. He stared ahead, his eyes were fixed, he whipped the horse like mad. "You fool," I cried, "you're only mixed, a drop too much you've had." "I'll never see a ghost, I swear, but I will find the cause." I turned to see if she was there, and sure enough, she was. It appeared to plead for aid as far as I could see. Its hands were on the tailboard laid, its eyes were fixed on me. The face, it cannot be denied, was white, a dull dead white. The great black eyes were open wide and glistened in the night. I stared at Jack, he stared ahead, and madly plied the lash. To show I wasn't scared, I said, "Why, Jack, we've made a mash." I tried to laugh, was vain to try was very lame. And though I wouldn't show it, I was frightened all the same. "She's mashed," Jack said, "I do not doubt, but 'tis a lonely place. And then you see it might turn out a breach of promise case." He flogged the horse until it jibbed and stood as one resigned. And then he struck the road and ran and left the cart behind. Now Jack and I, since infancy, had shared our joys and cares, and so I was resolved that we should share each other's scares. We raced each other all the way and never slept that night. And when we told the tale next day, they said that we were intoxicated.
Boom, boom.
That is the shittest end, Henry.
Wonder what Lawso would have done if he was around now with AI.
I want to put it into AI and see if it'll make a better poem. I was wondering if maybe he was writing this while he was sitting at the bar having a few drinks. It just seemed to get progressively worse the further it went.
It's like that the wedding singer song where it all starts off as the romance, and it's a bit disjointed because I wrote some of it before we broke up.
Yeah, I think Henry may have had his own set of problems through his life, poor bastard. So she has been immortalised in, would Henry Lawson be Australia's most famous poet?
One of them. I had a book. I don't think
you?
I ever read it, but I had one.
I'd like to read it because I want to see if his other poems are like that. Like you get the really good flow and then there's just a random bit and you're like, what the hell? I suppose sometimes I get writer's block, so maybe I can understand it.
I also don't think that I'm equipped to give feedback on poetry. I was never any good at poetry and studying poetry and teaching poetry.
It's hard to read, like words like, what was
Over without a V, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oa. I don't know how to say it. Anyway.
I think you did well because I knew what the spelling was when you said it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so however you said it was right, I'm sure.
Excellent.
But
Look
what would
at
I
me.
know?
I didn't expect to be a poetry reader. I was just going to take one little section out of that because I'm like, I'm not reading that.
Yeah, and you did. And I'm going to put it all in.
Okay, great. Here we are. So that's the story of Caroline.
There were a lot of side quests you could have taken there.
So many, and I took none because it was 13 pages long.
Yeah, you've done a really good job. Well done.
Thank you.
You could do whole stories on these other murder victims.
I could do whole stories on the other murder victims. I could just have done a story on the mum's death. I've combined a lot of side quests into one condensed story.
I just thought from the beginning that the mum was going to be the ghost.
Not the mum.
What happened to Maria?
I don't know what happened to Maria. And honestly, I think that took me about 9 hours to write, and I was like, I can't do any more rabbit holes. Mm-hmm. It's so hard when you're dealing with historical stuff and there's so many conflicting dates, but there's so much information here that, like, this is a real story. When I planned this, I was just going to do, like, the accounts. There's enough to do a whole episode on the different accounts of people who have seen her on that bridge. Mm. But now, because the new road is there, the Mount Victoria Pass part, it's kind of not right on the second bridge as it was originally. So I think that might have something to do with why people don't see her as much anymore. When I was like, ooh, there's an actual person attached to this ghost story, I was just so angry. Mm. The more I read that and the more I found out about it, oh, God.
I wish I had known this last night. Our family sat around at the campfire with a torch under our chin and told ghost stories, and this would have been very helpful to me yesterday.
What story did you tell?
I told a fake one about the property that we were sitting on. Yeah, about Bernie and Bernice. And there was a love story, of course.
A love ghost story.
And Scott cheated and got some stories using AI. And Claire told a real one, which you should do a story on.
Maybe Claire could come and do a story
I think she would love that.
Yes.
It's the Ghost of Lemon Tree Passage, do you know?
I've been researching
it. Oh, my God. Well, Claire can be a guest for you.
I want Claire to come and tell the story.
She did good.
Who are you? Sitting around telling ghost stories with your family.
I didn't start it. Good times. It was fun.
It wasn't a love story.
It most definitely was not a love story.
But I have tied it in to a thought process for myself, because when I heard about her story, I was, as I said, shocked. She was just a baby. The same age as our kids.
I know.
That are sitting around telling ghost stories with their mum and dad.
I know.
And she was fending for herself, so very vulnerable and at the mercy of grown men. In a society that told her that these predators were her only choice for survival. Her life was filled with loss, violence and betrayal. And it's hard to wrap your head around. I feel so sad and furiously angry just thinking about it. But back then, what happened behind closed doors was often a whole ass set of personal values. Like back in that time, what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. Do you remember people saying that?
I think they still do.
I know, and it's why it ties into so many of our modern day problems. No one looked, no one questioned, and the law barely reached into the homes where violence, neglect or abuse were happening. Families could be torn apart, and children just like Caroline were left to fend for themselves with almost no protection, but more than ample judgment. I think that's the part that really got me. Can you imagine us now going to the farmer's market, because like they used to go to the market, right, or going to the butcher's shop, and standing around having a conversation about a 13-year-old girl who was sleeping with her 11-year-old sister's husband? Like, that's fucking gross.
But it does happen.
I
For the
know.
Grace Tame story.
I know. But why didn't a woman help these girls? It seems so wrong. Her ghost on Mount Victoria Pass may be folklore, but the reality of her life is heartbreakingly human. And when you hear her story, I hope it's a reminder that when it comes to protecting the vulnerable people in our communities, we have come some of the way, but we still have a way to go. Caroline's story lingers in the midst of those mountains, and maybe, just maybe, she chooses to stay to ask us to challenge ourselves. Next time we feel like we're throwing a little bit of judgment someone's way, instead of asking, what's wrong with them? Maybe we should ask ourselves what's happening to them.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of If These Trees Could Talk. If you would like to access more about the places or information included in today's topic, please visit our website ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. If you would like to follow us on our adventures, check us out on Facebook or Insta. Our creative writer is Shannon Walters, and our podcast is produced at Bellevue Studio in the Hunter Valley with audio production by Megan Anderson. We love to hear your feedback, so please rate and review, and if you would like to hear more, please subscribe. We look forward to you joining us for our next adventure.